Hi, I'm Annie Fitzsimmons. I'm your Washington Realtors Legal Hotline lawyer. I am often asked a question that sounds something like this. Buyer and seller reach mutual acceptance at 10 p.m. on Monday. Is mutual acceptance on Monday or Tuesday? And the answer is mutual acceptance is on Monday. And then the follow-up question is always, well, what about the 9 p.m. deadline? And 9 p.m. is exactly that. It's a deadline established by the terms of agreement, the computation of time provision under the purchase and sale agreement. It's a deadline for performance when performance is required by the terms of agreement. So for example, if buyer wants to ask for concessions under buyer's inspection contingency and buyer has a 10-day inspection contingency, buyer's deadline for asking for those concessions is 9 p.m. on the 10th day. It's not midnight on the 10th day, it's 9 p.m. on the 10th day. If buyer wants to terminate based on the title review contingency, the fifth day, that's the default number of days, by 9 p.m. on the fifth day, they would have to deliver that default. Negotiating repairs, when seller's response to buyer's request for repairs is due 3 days after seller receives buyer's request for repairs, then seller's response is due by 9 p.m. on that third day. That's the significance of 9 p.m. When action is required by the terms of the purchase and sale agreement itself, then that action has to take place prior to 9 p.m. on the final date that it's due, or it is late. Mutual acceptance is not a term of performance or a required action under the terms of agreement. So mutual acceptance, establishing mutual acceptance, has nothing whatsoever to do with that 9 p.m. deadline established by the computation of times provision. So when parties reach mutual acceptance anytime prior to midnight, then mutual acceptance is that day. So buyer and seller could reach mutual acceptance at 11:59 p.m. on Monday, and mutual acceptance is Monday, not Tuesday. Unless, here's the unless. There's always an unless, right? Here's the unless. What if buyer makes an offer that expires on Monday and seller accepts buyer's offer, delivering seller's signature to buyer broker at 10 p.m. on Monday? Then, when is mutual acceptance? And hopefully you recognize that's a trick question. There is no mutual acceptance in that scenario. Why? Because buyer's counteroffer, which expires on Monday, expired at 9 p.m. based on the computation of times provision. So seller can't accept an expired offer. It's expired. It no longer exists. It's void. If seller wants to do business with buyer on the terms of buyer's offer, the parties may still be able to do that, but not through seller's acceptance of buyer's offer because buyer's offer expired at 9 p.m., the deadline created by buyer for the expiration of buyer's offer. Instead, the seller's going to counter buyer's offer, and maybe the only term seller will change is the expiration date of buyer's offer. Send it back over to buyer in the form of a counter offer. Seller signs everything else, initials all the addendum, initials a change to the offer, to buyer's offer expiration date, sends it all back over to buyer in the form of a counter offer that expires, let's say, on Wednesday. So long as buyer accepts seller's counteroffer by 9 p.m. on Wednesday, assuming seller hasn't sooner withdrawn that counteroffer, then now we have mutual acceptance. So if seller never withdraws that counteroffer and buyer accepts seller's counteroffer at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, then now we have a binding agreement with mutual acceptance on Wednesday. If you have questions on this topic or any other, visit warealtor.org. Follow the links to the legal hotline and ask me a question. Thank you for being a Washington Realtors member.